begins. Good evening. Welcome to our City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. Still getting used to that. I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:30. And could we have a roll call, please? Or attendance?
All council members are present. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to ask our Vice Mayor to lead us in the pledge. Thank you, Vice Mayor. We will move on to, I guess I got the order wrong. We did our attendance. We'll move on to item 4, our consent calendar. These items will be approved by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Would any member of the council like to pull an item? Nope. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on any, I'm sorry, there's a queue. Oh, yes. Let me have our council members make their announcements. Councilmember Clark.
So I don't want to pull an item, but I am going to recuse myself from participation in item 4.1 due to real property ownership interest located in close proximity to the project site.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember McAllister?
Yes, I also have to recuse myself because my vast empire of Baskin-Robbins is located within 100 yards of McKelvey Ballpark, and it could influence the outcome of the development. And so to abstain from any kind of conflict of interest, I will recuse myself in that one.
Great, thank you. So now moving on, are there any members of the public wishing to provide comment on any item? Yes, please come to the podium.
I think there just may have been some, this is for public comment on items on the consent calendar.
Oh, yes, this is for the consent calendar. So anyone wishing to speak on a consent calendar item? No? All right, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for a motion and second. So Councilmember Matichak?
I'll move the consent calendar.
And there's a second from Councilmember Ramirez. Any other discussion on this item? If not, we will vote, please. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And yes, there is a recusal on 4.1 by Councilmember McAllister and Councilmember Clark. We're moving on to item 5, oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the council from acting on non-agenda items. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized item? Great. If you could line up, that would be. And yes, if you could fill out a blue card before or after and give it to our city clerk. Yes, thank you. I'm still trying to get used to this. So our first speaker, welcome.
Good evening. So my name is Gary Wesley. I'm from here in Mountain View. I attended both of the board meetings concerning measures on the local ballot, specifically the Mountain View Wisman Board of Trustees that's placed a $259 million bond measure on the March 3rd ballot, and the Foothill De Anza District with an $898 million bond measure and a separate $48 5-year parcel tax. there is a feature new, as far as I can tell, to the bond measures this year that should concern anyone, such as anyone on this council, thinking about endorsing those measures. And that is that the language of the measures provides not only for the total amount to be borrowed, but for the bonds to be sold, that is, the money to be borrowed over many years, mandatorily. So in the case of the Foothill measure, no more than $48 million is to be borrowed by selling bonds each year. For the Mountain View Wissman measure, no more than $18.6 million is to be borrowed each year. Now you might imagine, if you knew nothing, that borrowing money slowly is prudent, but actually here just the opposite, because it depends upon the interest rate. And so right now interest rates on bonds are low, and so the total repayment is about double what you would borrow. If you cannot sell, except over the next 17 years, the bonds that are authorized, the interest rates are only going to rise, and the total repayment will soar, and so will the total tax bill. So before you endorse this, contact me. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Chris Robel. Good evening, council members. And I live in Palo Alto. But I did want to actually touch upon, coincidentally, Measure G, which the previous speaker was talking about as well. I think it has ramifications as you think about tax proposals and housing issues. And it's a very different perspective than what most people, I think, are talking about. First of all, I do think this measure is very fiscally irresponsible. It's an $898 million bond that will cost multiples of that, for the reasons that the previous speaker just mentioned. It's going to last. It's a tax that all taxpayers will pay for over 30 years to fund huge spending on unspecified projects. So essentially the only thing the money cannot be used for is administrator salary increases. Anything else is fair game, so it's a blank check. The other issue, and this is the one that is really you don't read about, and it's not in, I haven't read about anywhere, but I verified it with all the legislators. It's an unfair tax methodology. So it doubles down on Prop 13 and makes this effectively kind of a pro-gentrification, anti-housing bill. And let me explain how that works. The way this will work, if you vote yes on Measure G, is every homeowner will pay a tax of $160 every year for every $1 million of assessed value, not fair value. So people who bought decades ago will pay very little, just like Prop 13. People that bought recently, recent homeowners, or will pay a lot, right? They're going to pay disproportionately. So many, in Palo Alto it'll be whatever, $500 a year. Here probably the same. But the bigger, and the people that bought a long time ago won't. It's further reason not to sell, so it constrains supply of homes on the market, right? So you've got less supply, so they're keeping prices high. And on the would-be buyers won't be able to afford. It makes the bar that much higher to be able to afford a house, right? If you got, I'm a fine pity, right? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance to qualify for a mortgage, and it's that much higher because your taxes are higher. And by the way, they're not deductible because of President Trump's tax law changes. So, therefore, the home buyers are further stretched to be able to afford. So they're stuck, and so really it is an anti-housing bill. And so you may ask why it was proposed this way. I mean, and this is Measure G. It's a massive one. But I spoke with the Foothill De Anza board members and lots of legislators, and the reason, and they were very honest, the reason they proposed it as a bond measure is because it has a lower threshold for passing, 55%. Whereas a parcel tax, which they also have, because hedging your bets, but is a 66% higher hurdle. So they want to get it through, and the 55% people won't notice. And I'm all for schools, and I'm all for funding schools. Believe me, I bought in Palo Alto for that reason. But this is an undisciplined approach, and it's a dangerous approach. So please do not endorse G or any bonds, for that matter, that use assessed value as the basis of taxation, because it taxes the poor, and the rich don't get taxed as much. Thank you, and I hope that the basis for taxation will get changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come on up.
Good evening, I'm Marilyn Winkleby. I'm here to encourage you to consider measures to restrict youth access to e-cigarettes, including the adoption of the excellent Santa Clara County ordinance that bans flavored tobacco and e-cigarettes and bans all tobacco products in pharmacies. I've lived in Mountain View for 32 years. I've raised 3 children here. Last week, I attended the Mountain View Challenge Team, a meeting for people involved in education of our youth. One of my Stanford colleagues, Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Flesher, who's a professor of pediatrics, gave a talk on e-cigarettes and vaping. She described the epidemic of e-cigarette use among our students and what we as parents and policymakers can do. This resonated with me. For over 30 years, I've led a research team at Stanford. Much of my research is focused on heart disease and cancer risk factors. This has included research on tobacco use among teens and our understanding of the power of the tobacco companies. Here are a few things I learned. First, the most common form of tobacco use among our youth now is e-cigarettes. Why? Many teens falsely believe that vaping is less harmful than smoking. E-cigarettes are less expensive per use than traditional cigarettes, and vape cartridges are often formulated with flavorings that attract youth users. There are over 15,000 flavors of e-cigarettes, including apple pie, unicorn milk, and blue voodoo. These are not adult flavors. The trends in e-cigarette use are alarming. The percent of U.S. high school students who have used an e-cigarette in the past 30 days increased from 1% 10 years ago to 30% now. The use among our 8th graders has doubled. E-cigarettes are not safe. They contain large amounts of nicotine, a highly addictive chemical. We know that nicotine impacts brain development, intelligence, and learning in our students. One vaping pod, like Juul, contains the same amount of nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. Some students are inhaling as much nicotine in one day as 2 packs of cigarettes. I've met students like this because I tutor at Graham and Mountain View High. The tobacco companies love these students because they'll be addicted for life. Lastly, the big tobacco companies are buying the e-cigarette companies. Marlboro, our largest cigarette manufacturer, now owns 33% of Juul. They are masters at marketing cigarettes and cigarette products to our youth. So in conclusion, I encourage Mountain View to adopt Santa Clara County ordinance on flavored tobacco and cigarettes. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Trisha Barr, and I'm a friend of Dr. Winkleby's. I'm also a parent of kids in 5th, 8th, and 11th grades, and I live in Menlo Park. I'm a member advocate of the 17th District PTA. Youth e-cigarette use in the United States has skyrocketed to what the U.S. Surgeon General and FDA call epidemic levels. It's a public health crisis, and it's getting worse. I'm worried about my kids, and I'm worried about all our kids. We're seeing the same trends in Santa Clara County as at the local and national levels. This past November, in a huge leap, the 2019 National Tobacco Survey results showed that 28% of high school students are currently using e-cigarettes, meaning they've used them within the last 30 days. This is likely underreported, and some professionals, Dr. Bonnie, who Dr. Winkleby referenced, think that the use may be as high as current usage of 50%. We're fortunate in Santa Clara County. San Mateo County has a similar ordinance that has laid the groundwork for cities to take immediate action by adopting ordinances that restrict the access of these products to our youth. However, the ordinance only applies to unincorporated Santa Clara County, and each city needs to take it upon themselves to adopt it in order for it to cover its jurisdiction. So please consider immediately adopting the Santa Clara Model Ordinance within Mountain View. It would prohibit the sale and distribution of all electronic cigarettes and flavored tobacco and prohibit the sale of all tobacco products in pharmacies. For example, in the Mountain View pharmacies like Walgreens, they sell cigarettes and other tobacco products. We need to keep these products out of the hands of our youth. On November 5th in Cupertino, city council meeting, the sheriff shared the results of a youth decoy operation they just conducted, and they found that 43% of the retailers had sold to a youth decoy. That day, Cupertino passed the county ordinance to prohibit the sale of flavored tobacco. That was the same day that the county had passed the ordinance to ban e-cigarettes, and now Cupertino's going back and looking at that. Palo Alto has provided staff direction to mirror the county ordinance and close the existing loopholes that they have for adult-only tobacco shops. Cupertino, I mentioned. Morgan Hill passed its ordinance in December. Los Gatos and Saratoga have also adopted the county's ordinance to prohibit the sale of flavored tobacco. Saratoga is actively considering amending theirs to prohibit e-cigarettes. Other cities, such as San Jose, are currently considering taking action. At the federal level, the most recent federal guidance from the FDA on January 2nd said it will prioritize enforcement of some flavored tobacco products, but not all flavored tobacco products. It's still up to local jurisdictions to take actions. Some of the slides in there show, from Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, show what's not exempt. I support Jerry Hill, but we can't wait to take action. We know last year it was withdrawn because of changes. So please take action here.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, welcome, Mr. Gardino.
Mayor Abe-Koga, Vice Mayor Kamei, and members of the council. My name is Carl Guardino, former resident of Mountain View. For the record, a resident of Monte Sereno, California. I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group Foundation, and I wanted to come out tonight to thank you and focused on a single word of impact. Through your leadership and support, the impact that we've been able to collectively make, that you've been able to make through last November's 15th annual Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. I wanted to come this evening and present you with the Mayor's Cup because once again, Mountain View won our Mayor's Cup Community Challenge. And if it fits your own, what you allow as individual council members, and for your Form 700 to the Fair Political Practices Commission, each of you your own 15th annual Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot Racing shirt with a value of $4.25. Those are in order among the council as well. But let me build on the word impact. 16 years ago, when my wife Leslie and I woke up on Thanksgiving morning and heard on the radio 20,000 people downtown walking and running to help feed the hungry. What was shocking about that radio report was that they were talking about Sacramento, not wealthy Silicon Valley. And that's when we decided that we would put together the Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. That has grown over these past 15 years. It is now the largest time Thanksgiving Day run in the world, 7 years in a row. And thanks to your leadership and others in our valley, we've been able to now donate nearly $10 million to 5 great nonprofits, helping hundreds of thousands of individuals and families much more vulnerable than almost anyone in this room tonight. And you've made that happen. Every year you've embraced this race, you've supported it, you've come out and walked and run with us. And so for the hundreds of thousands of people benefiting through the Second Harvest Food Bank of Silicon Valley, the Food Bank of Santa Cruz County, the Healthier Kids Foundation, the Health Trust, and Housing Trust Silicon Valley, we thank you for your personal leadership and commitment to all of our communities. Thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership, and congratulations on your retirement. Not yet. I know it's not yet.
As my wife chuckled, Carl, remind people with 3 young children and a mortgage, there is no retirement.
That is true.
But I will be transitioning over the next 4 to 8 months out of this role as CEO of the leadership group to whatever might be next to serve our communities.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you for all of your contributions to our community, and I'm glad that the Mayor's Cup is back. We had a long stretch where we were winning it, and then we lost it, but it's back in Mountain View, so we're going to try to keep it here.
Thank you, Mayor Abekoka.
All right, next speaker, please. Welcome.
My name is James Kuzma. I live and work in Mountain View, and just to make the point I'm going to make, I chose to take the 51 bus here today rather than walking like I normally would. And when I first got on, we just barely missed the green light crossing Central and had to wait 3 minutes. Then we just barely missed the light crossing Villa, had to wait another minute. Then we just barely missed the light crossing Dana and had to wait another minute. So we were at least 5 minutes delayed on what should have been like a 5-minute journey, which I could have walked faster then. Now, the impetus for this was I went to the VTA board meeting last week to see what's going on and make a public comment, and they were discussing declaring a climate emergency and what could be done to do that. And Councilmember McAllister would, of course, have been there. And one of the things that came up is what specifically would the VTA be doing to actually act on their climate emergency. And something that came up occasionally was providing traffic signal priority for buses, making it so that if a bus would just barely miss a light, it can go through, or that if you can adjust the signal timing slightly to make it so that the flow of people can work better, it does. However, my understanding is from that meeting is that they need buy-in from city councils to do anything on that. And so I wanted to encourage the city to work with the VTA to see what can be done to make things that much better, and to look at trying to make buses better, make transportation more effective in this county, work towards our own Vision Zero goals that you guys adopted last month by reducing the number of people in cars, and just generally making everyone's lives a bit easier. Thank you.
Do we have a question? Councilmember McAllister?
Thank you for also coming. I saw him over at VTA, and thank you for coming out tonight. But I do like to let you know that Mountain View is working on a smart city program to get our vehicles and buses and the signals and everything connected. So we are understudying on that, and we're working for it. But we appreciate you coming out to encourage other cities to also become more advanced technically.
I would, of course, encourage more ambition wherever possible, but
Great.
I understand it's political.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, welcome.
Good evening and Happy New Year, I hope. I've been wrestling with what I'm going to say to you for quite a while, whether I should or shouldn't, and I finally decided I should. Mountain View has lost a powerful conscience and a particularly strong person who never, ever wavered from his particular social justice view. I would respectfully ask the council and staff and audience to observe a moment of silence in memory of Hope Lopez.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Diane Elizabeth Jones. I've been a resident of Mountain View since 1996 and in Palo Alto. And we were living beautifully here in Mountain View, and Google came in and we were pushed out. Ellis acted in order in favor of businesses in Google. I still love Mountain View, even though that happened, and I think they're a really wonderful company, but I ended up homeless with my kid in the car. And I'm perfectly content there right now, but I think that the resources for residents who are homeless are important. These RVs, a lot of them, they are here, and a lot of them did not grow up or live here. Where did they come from? And it's frustrating. And I just think that if we made Mountain View a one-horse town, how wonderful would that be? Because then we can gauge what's coming in and out, and it'd be safe for people. And a lot of things that they're doing, they're dumping their poop and their pee everywhere, and they're trashing everything. So I'd like the parking lot program, I'm mentioning this as a side note, you'd have to make sure they have bathrooms too, because they have to empty those big containers. Now Palo Alto, they decided a long time ago. They said, we'll give you a one-way ticket out wherever, and that's it, we're done. And I think that's wonderful because then it gives them the option to be able to leave. And when a lot of them don't have the ability to leave, or they can't move their RVs because they're not well kept up. And I think that offering that as part of a parameter may be something in the future. I don't know. I also see, and I hate to say the naughty no-no, but foreigners. A lot of foreigners have moved in here, and I just don't know where they came from, but it feels like they're all racing past us, getting houses and all these things when Mountain View, where I raised my kid, is where I think those resources should go to, and the availability for housing, because it's gone from, my income is $1,400 on Social Security, and it just simply doesn't apply to some of the rent prices that are out there. And that's pretty much one thing. And the next thing is ticketing. We are being over inundated by operations for people who are homeless with a lot of ticketing, and it eats up in our ability to go to 24-hour fitness and shower and clean and take care of things. So we're being trampled on, and I think it's kind of abusive at this point, that we're being stopped a lot when I've lived in Mountain View since '96, and I love it here. I'm not doing anything wrong, and I just think that we should maybe stop and think it might be criminalizing the homeless, and to just be careful. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on an non-agendized item? If not, I will close. All right. So I will close public comment, and we will move on to item number 6, public hearing 6.1. A row house development at 851 and 853 Sierra Vista Avenue. And we have first, so I should first ask, do any council members wish to make disclosures such as contacts with the applicant or site visits? Yes, Councilor Ramirez?
I would like to disclose that I met with the applicant.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Matichak?
I'll disclose that I went and did a site visit by myself.
Councilmember Hicks? Yes.
Yes, I also met with the applicant.
Great. Anyone else? No. All right, thank you. And then we have a staff presentation from Stephanie Williams and Diana Pancioli. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Diana Pancioli with the city's planning division, and I have with me tonight our planning manager and zoning administrator, Stephanie Williams. The item in front of you tonight is a planned unit development and a development review permit request to allow 9-unit row house development and a heritage tree removal permit to allow removal of 6 heritage trees at 851 and 853 Sierra Vista Avenue. The 0.56-acre project site is located in the northeast corner at the intersection of Sierra Vista Avenue and Colony Street. The project site is currently developed with 3 single-family homes and an industrial warehouse building. The project site is surrounded with multifamily residential buildings to the east and the south, and single-family homes of 1 and 2 stories to the west as well. The project site is also in close proximity to a city park at the intersection of Plymouth and Sierra Vista Avenue. The project site consists of 3 parcels, and The northern portion of the project site at 853 Sierra Vista, it has a general plan land use designation of medium density residential. The southern portion of the project site has a general plan land use designation of general industrial and is also zoned general industrial. As part of the project, the applicant is proposing to demolish all the single-family homes and industrial building on site and develop it with 9 row house units. The project site layout consists of 9 units, and the units are facing the Sierra Vista Avenue and Colony Street and the 2 common open spaces. The driveway access to the project site is provided through Colony Street, and it connects to all the garages on the interior of the site and also common open spaces. The access to the common open spaces is the pedestrian access to the common open spaces is provided through Sierra Vista Avenue. The architectural style of the project follows traditional style in nature with craftsman elements such as porches, balconies, composition shingles, railings, gable and shed roof forms. The units are differentiated by use of various massing techniques, exterior materials, and colors. The site is laid out with visible front doors and substantial porches facing the street frontages. And the proposed architectural style is also compatible with the varied architectural style that is found in the neighborhood. The project is proposing a general plan and zoning map amendment, as I discussed earlier, but the less than 2 acre project site is using a gatekeeper exemption as per the code section 36.52.15 and 36.52.55 as noted in the staff report, and therefore the project never came to council for gatekeeper authorization. The project was reviewed by the Development Review Committee in April and August 2019, where the Development Review Committee recommended conditional approval of the project, and the applicant has since worked with staff on improving their project plans based on the conditions of approval, which have been shown in the plans being reviewed by council tonight. The project also prepared an initial study as per California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and the analysis revealed that with the implementation of the mitigation measures and the standard conditions of approval, the project will not have any significant impact on the environment, and a mitigated negative declaration is recommended tonight. The project has, as I mentioned, 3 single-family homes on 3 separate parcels, and therefore the existing tenants are and the units are not under city's Community Stabilization and Fair Rent Act and Tenant Relocation Assistance Ordinance as well. The project was reviewed by the Environmental Planning Commission at the December 4th meeting, where unanimously the EPC recommended approval to the City Council. In conclusion, staff would like to note that the project is supporting the general plan policies and goals and is also in compliance with the city's row house guidelines and subdivision map act as well. And in recommendation, we recommend to approve the mitigated negative declaration and the project and the tentative map as per the conditions of approval listed and attached to the staff report. Alternatively, City Council can also consider to approve the project with modified condition or defer the project back to EPC and DRC, deny the project or deny the map, or provide any other direction. This concludes staff presentation. The applicant is present here tonight as well if you have any questions for staff or the applicant. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So are there any questions from council members before we open it up to the public? Nope. All right, I'm going to open this up for public comment, and we'll start with the applicant. Would you like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Maris Ahi, and I am the architectural designer for the project as well as the representative for the applicant. I would like to start off by thanking staff for their presentation and their staff report. I'll try to be brief. So this project had an informal submittal in August of 2018. Since then, it has had 3 formal submittals and has met with the Design Review Commission twice. Our project was seen by the Environmental Planning Commission on December 4th, 2019, and received unanimous approval. We've been receptive to comments and suggestions from staff and the DRC throughout this process. Some background on the site, which is located on the corner of Sierra Vista Avenue and Colony Street. This site is adjacent to 2 large row house developments, single-family residences, and also Sierra Vista Park, which is 1 parcel over. The 2 northern parcels, which is 853 Sierra Vista A and B, are zoned R32 SD residential, and the southern parcel, which is 851 Sierra Vista, is zoned MM40 industrial. So the parcel which is industrial is an island surrounded by R32, so this project would actually finally allow the site to match with the surrounding parcels on the zoning map and the general plan. For this project, we had certain concepts that we tried to follow. First, looking at where the project is in relation to the existing neighborhood. Second, making sure that the site layout, open space, and architecture were all fully developed. And third, creating a project that would be the most successful for the community. So for the site layout, you can see from the site plan, we have 2 attached units, 3 attached units, and 4 detached units. This was done to create variety within the project, but also to create a project that would not feel heavy or dense. The orientation of the units, which includes setbacks, shifting, and the driveway placement, were all heavily examined. The goal was to create a project that would seamlessly fit into the site. The common open space for the project equals 2,900 square feet, which is more than 3 times the minimum requirement. The private open space for the project equals 1,718 square feet, which is almost 2 times the minimum requirement. This was done intentionally to create somewhat of a green ribbon that goes directly through and all around the units. Finally, with the architecture, we combined traditional craftsman aesthetic, which is common in the area, and tried to mix modern architectural details and accents, which include colors and materials, fiber cement panels with vertical, horizontal, and shingle patterns, composition roofing, metal railing, and stone accents. An initial study was prepared for the project due to the general plan change. The analysis determined that the implementation of the 3 mitigated measures in the conditions of approval would reduce all impacts to the project. So in conclusion, this project provides an incredible opportunity to fully maximize the existing purpose of the site and to create additional housing that will benefit the community with no significant impact on the area. This project complies with every ordinance and guideline, but tries to go above and beyond certain requirements. This project is below the maximum and above the minimum for many categories, which include open space, height, setbacks, and spacing. Every single decision was carefully addressed and thought out to ensure the best possible project for the city of Mountain View. And thank you, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? No, if not, actually, we will now take public comments. So if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, actually, can I get a show of hands? Okay, so please come forward. If you could fill out a blue card before, after. Actually, we don't take comments from the audience. You need to come up to the podium if you want to ask a question or make a comment. So.
Christina Pereira, Mountain View resident. Very brief comment. This looks like an excellent project, and I really appreciate seeing a development project that doesn't further exacerbate our jobs housing imbalance. So adding more housing, yay.
Great, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No? All right, if not, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for any comments, or I'll entertain motions. Yes, Councilmember Hicks.
So I intend to support this project, and I was just going to say that in addition to some of the reasons that staff mentioned, I appreciate that when I asked further questions, it's possible apparently to convert the lower portion of the units. It would not be terribly difficult to convert the lower portion to accessory dwelling units. So that's an additional advantage, I think, of this particular form of housing. And I also like that when I met with the applicant, they said they were encouraged to put in more permeable paving by the Design Review Committee, and I would encourage that as well. It's both better for the environment, for water filtration, and I also think more enjoyable for residents if more of the paving is permeable. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember McAllister.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Can you hit your button as well?
Oh.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Not used to this end of on the right side. The other side, yeah, the other finger. Okay. Approve a mitigation negative declaration for the Sierra Vista Row House project in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, attachment 1 to the council report. 2, adopt a resolution approving a general plan use map amended for the property located 851 Sierra Vista Avenue from general industrial to medium density residential to be read in title only. Further reading waive attachment 2 to the council report. 3, introduce an ordinance amending the zoning map for the properties located at 851 and 853 Sierra Vista Avenue from the R3-2/SD multifamily residential special design and MM-4 general industrial district to R3-2 multifamily residential. To be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for January the 28th, 2020, attachment 3 to the council report. Adopt a resolution conditionally approving a planned unit development permit and development review permit to construct a 9-unit row house development and heritage tree removal permit to remove 6 heritage trees at 851 and 853 Sierra Vista Avenue. To be read in title only, further reading waive, attachment 4 to the council report. 5, adopt a resolution conditionally approving a tentative map for 9 residential condominium units located at 851 and 853 Sierra Vista Avenue to be read in title only, further reading waive, attachment 5 to the council report. And I'd just like to comment that also I am much appreciated that the developer was able to increase the tree canopy by over 50% or 100, but it was a great addition.
Great, thank you, Councilmember McAllister, and we have a second by Councilmember Ramirez. Is there any other discussion on this item? No, and I would just add that I think this is a good example of how to densify and work well with the neighborhood. So I look forward to this project. And we will take a vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 7, unfinished business. 7.1, appointment of the city manager and authorization to execute employment agreement with Kimbra McCarthy. And do we have a staff presentation? Yes. Ms. Suresh, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Mountain View conducted an extensive recruitment and selection process for the city manager position following Dan Rich's announcement that he will be retiring December of 2019. After finishing the recruitment process, Council selected Kimbra McCarthy to serve as city manager. Kimbra rose to the top of the applicant pool and has 11 years' experience in local government, including serving 2 years with the City of Mountain View as Deputy City Manager from 2014 to 2016, and most recently serving as Assistant City Manager for City of Redwood City. Kimbra holds a Master's of Law degree from the University of Limerick in Ireland, a Juris Doctorate degree and Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science, both from Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas. The purpose of the item tonight is for council to approve the selection of Kimbra for the city manager position and authorize the mayor or designee to execute an employment agreement with the terms stated in the council report and also which the mayor will summarize in compliance with the Brown Act. One additional item I'd like to point out is that there was a term that was unintentionally left off of tonight's council report that will be included in the employment agreement, and it's as follows. City payment of 4% of annual salary into a deferred compensation plan. And Kimbra was not able to join us today or this evening for the meeting. She is on a pre-planned vacation with her family, but she is watching tonight. I'm available for any questions. That's the conclusion of the presentation.
Great, thank you very much. And before we take any council action, in accordance with the Brown Act requirements, that the City Council orally report a summary of any council action on salaries, salary schedules, or fringe benefits for the city's council appointees. The specific recommendations to be approved by the City Council regarding the appointment of the city manager are as follows. Salary of $307,000 annually. City payment of 4% of annual salary into a deferred compensation plan. Participation in health, retirees' health, life, and disability insurance plans. Participation in the CalPERS retirement system with the same employee cost share and employer contribution as provided to department heads. Holidays, sick leave, and management leave as provided to department heads. Vacation leave in the amount of 23 days per year, increasing to 24 days after 4 years of service. Initial bank of 90 hours of vacation leave and 80 hours of sick leave. Cell phone allowance of $50 per month. Eligible to request relocation reimbursement and a loan through City Council Policy D13, Mountain View Employee Home Buyer and Relocation Assistance Program, subject to City Council approval and availability of funds at the time of the request. In the event of termination of the employment agreement, 6 months of severance as provided to council appointees. Adopt a revised salary plan to reflect the compensation change to the city manager classification as attached to the council report. So now, are there any questions from council members? Great. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? If not, I will bring it back to council, and there's a motion by Councilmember Matichak.
So I move that we appoint Kimber McCarthy to serve as city manager for the city of Mountain View and authorize the mayor or designee to execute an employment agreement with Ms. McCarthy, and also to adopt a revised salary plan to reflect this compensation change to the city manager classification, which is attachment 1 to the council report.
Great, thank you. And we have a second by Councilmember McAllister. Any other discussion on this item? I just want to say thank you to Ms. Rush and our staff for with our consultant Terry Black for doing an extensive and I think a very thorough recruitment process. I was very pleased with the number of applicants as well as the caliber of applicants, and I personally am excited. I had a chance to work with Ms. McCarthy when she was here, and I'm excited that she'll be returning, so we look forward to welcoming her, I believe, in March. So with that, we will take a vote. And motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if you're watching, yes, Ms. McCarthy, we look forward to seeing you. Yeah, hurry on back. All right, we are moving on. Let's see. So, yeah, can we, you think we can keep going, folks? Council? Yep. All right, let's do it. We will move on to item 7.2, accept certification of referendum petition against ordinance 15.19 and take action to repeal the ordinance or submit it to the voters. And we have a staff presentation by, is it our city attorney?
It's me.
Oh, it's by, I'm sorry, our city clerk.
Okay. I actually have a verbal report for you this evening, and I can pull up some of the actions necessary, but my report will be mainly verbal. So the item before you this evening is to accept the certification of the referendum petition against Ordinance 15.19 and to take one of two actions, either repeal the ordinance or submit it to the voters. A brief background on this item. On September 24, 2019, the City Council introduced an ordinance restricting parking of oversized vehicles on narrow streets with an effective date of June 30th, 2020. On October 22nd, 2019, Council adopted Ordinance 1519, an ordinance amending Articles 1 and 8 of Chapter 19 of the Mountain View City Code related to oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets. I will note that the bicycle lane ordinance related to oversized vehicle parking on certain streets adjacent to Class 2 bikeways, for which a referendum was not submitted, was also introduced on September 24th and adopted on October 22nd and went into effect on January 1st, 2020. The Public Works Department is in the process of designing and planning signage in compliance with that ordinance and anticipates installation will be completed in March. Related to the Narrow Streets Ordinance, on November 22nd, 2019, within 30 days of my attestation of the adopted ordinance per the Elections Code, a referendum petition against Ordinance 1519 related to oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets was submitted. To qualify for further action, a referendum petition must contain signatures of at least 10% of the registered voters of the City of Mountain View. 10% of the registered voters per the last report of voter registration was 3,761. I reviewed the petition for compliance with the Elections Code, performed a at face value review of the signatures, and counted 4,939 unverified signatures. On November 25th, I delivered the petition to the Registrar of Voters for signature verification and requested full count verification of signatures. The ROV declined to conduct a full count and proceeded with a random sampling of 500 signatures per the Elections Code. The random sampling is drawn such that every signature filed is given an equal opportunity to be included in that random sampling. On December 23rd, the Registrar of Voters provided the results of the signature verification per the random sampling method, which projected 4,179 valid signatures on the petition. The statistical sampling was over 110% of the signatures required. It was approximately 111%, and therefore deemed sufficient by the ROV. As the petition was found sufficient, the effective date for the ordinance is suspended, and the Election Code requires the City Council to accept the certification of the petition results at the next regular council meeting, which is this evening, and to reconsider the ordinance. The Election Code provides that the council must then take one of the following actions: repeal the ordinance or submit it to the voters either at the next regular municipal election or at a special election called for that purpose. If the council desires to repeal the ordinance, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 15.19 may be introduced this evening with a second reading set for January 28th. Pursuant to the Elections Code, if the council repeals the ordinance or a substantially similar ordinance may not be enacted for a period of 1 year. If council wishes to submit the ordinance to the voters, council may call the election for the next general municipal election on November 3rd, 2020, or call a special election on April 14th, 2020. If council submits the ordinance to the voters and a majority of the voters vote in favor of it, the ordinance will be adopted 10 days after the vote is certified to the City Council. If the majority of the voters do not vote in favor, the ordinance may not be again enacted for a period of 1 year after the date of disapproval by the voters. To place the ordinance on the November ballot, the cost estimate from the Registrar of Voters is approximately $90,000. If council places the ordinance on that ballot, direction should be provided this evening to include funding of $90,000 in the proposed fiscal year 2021 city clerk's office budget, in addition to the office holder election costs. To place the ordinance on the April 14th special election ballot, the cost estimate from the Registrar of Voters is approximately $1.3 to $1.8 million, as it would be a standalone election, as no other jurisdictions in the county are currently have an item on that ballot. If council places the ordinance on the April ballot, council must adopt the resolution to call that election this evening in order to transmit it to the Registrar of Voters by their deadline, which is this Friday for that April election. In addition, a budget appropriation with 5 affirmative votes would be required. The proposed ballot question, as noted in the staff report, which must be 75 words or less, is as follows. Shall ordinance number 15.19, amending Articles 1 and 8 of Chapter 19 of the Mountain View City Code related to oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets, be adopted? As noted in this, and as noted in the staff report, additional direction requested this evening, should council submit the ordinance to the voters at either election, is to direct the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of the ballot measure, determine whether the council will submit an argument related to the measure, and to direct me to take all necessary actions related to the measure. Please note that the proposed resolutions to call each of the elections have been placed on the dais with corrected ballot argument and impartial analysis deadlines that actually match what's in the staff reports, that they're just incorrect in the resolution. So those have been placed on the dais for you. I apologize for that inconvenience. So staff recommends council adopt a resolution to certify the sufficiency of the signatures on the referendum petition, and pursuant to the elections code, take action to either repeal the ordinance in its entirety or call an election to submit it to the voters. So this concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? Nope. All right. I'm assuming we have some public comment on this item. Could I get a show of hands of those wishing to speak? Okay, quite a few. I will make the time at 1.5 minutes per speaker. And if you could please come to the podium, fill out a blue card either before or after and give it to the city clerk. We will... Yes, and we believe that there will be many different perspectives on this item, and I ask that we all listen to each other carefully and respectfully. Please do not have any outbursts of emotion. I just ask that we listen to everyone with respect. Thank you. So we will start off. First speaker, please come on to the podium.
Christina Pereira, Mountain View resident. I'm in favor of repealing. I don't believe we should be spending the city's money on elections when it's so obvious what the city wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Pam Lehner from Mountain View for 49 years. But you threw me off by going under the 3 minutes, so wish me luck. A few years ago, a small faction began a campaign to encourage people from all over the county, state, and often beyond to park as desired on our streets. But the influx was not limited, and the sheer number quickly became unmanageable. Concerned citizens and service and city organizations were overwhelmed with unsurmountable problems. Soon there were not enough resources to help those who flocked here, in spite of the over $2.5 million in taxpayer-funded services. While plans were being made to find safer, better ways for folks to live, residents who found their neighborhood character changed overnight, who found their visibility and safety impacted, asked for some guidelines and strategy. While it may appear to some that the council was not responsive, that is not true. They partnered with others to create safe parking programs and to connect the people with other services. Unfortunately, people who expressed concern were denigrated as being incompassionate and uncaring, and that's too far from the truth. The problem is that this has become a dysfunctional thing in that it's labeled as a ban. And I want to be clear, there never was a ban. We never intended a ban. There never will be a ban. We just looked for logical, common sense, good solutions that would serve all of our committees or all of our community. I would ask that you think about not using the term ban because it's very much a misrepresentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Liang. I'm a resident of Wisma Station. First, for this appeal, I think I believe every Mountain View residents have the right to vote for it. So we can't just restrict it to, just decide it now. On behalf of this matter, I do have some suggestions. First, not sure how this more than 4,000 signature was verified. But I do heard that over of them, 3,500 signatures are not valid. So I'm not should we carefully verify those signatures very carefully? If we can decide there is not enough valid signatures, we do not have to go all those efforts to do this over and over again. I believe the original audience is already carefully, passed through lots of efforts from all the residents. Second, we also need to set up a list of regulations. Given the trouble, all the problems related to the transportation traffic, especially on those narrow roads, we should register every current parked RVs in Mountain View carefully and in details, like plate number, how many people lived in, the names, are they currently working in Mountain View, which company are they working in, when they moved to Mountain View. And I think the property should be given to those who come earlier and who are currently work in Mountain View.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Chris Lehner, and I've lived in Mountain View since
Could you pull the mic? I don't know if it goes any higher.
I'll get down.
Thank
How's
you.
this? Anyway, my name is Chris Lehner. I've lived in Mountain View since 1971, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. First, I want to thank you for all the hard work and effort that you put into the safe parking program, the oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets ordinance, and the homeless issues over the past 2 years. This is a very complex issue, and I know, based on the research I've done, how much time and effort you put into that. I'd like to heartily recommend that you submit the oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets ordinance on the November 2020 ballot. This is extremely important. And I do want to emphasize that I believe heartily, after spending a lot of time on this, that this is not a ban. I think the ban word has been overused in a lot of areas. And I personally do care about the situation, and I want to help these people. Secondly, you want to make sure the ordinance is kept in place. Otherwise, do not rescind it. Otherwise, we're going to end up having to start over again after a year. So a year from the date it's rescinded. Lastly, there are a couple of things I want to recommend and encourage you to do. Continue the excellent work being done to implement the safe parking program. Also, investigate ways to increase enforcement of any existing codes that will help the parking issue. And then a big one is try to be transparent about what's transpiring in the future somehow. I don't have a solution for it, but
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
To the City Council, my name is Arnold Leon, resident of Mountain View for 48 years. I urge the City Council to approve the citywide November vote on the oversized vehicle, and I won't use that word, I'll use code. This long-standing issue needs the citizens to make the final decision on implementation. I also recommend that the city not spend an estimated $1.8 million to have a special April election on this issue. Instead, use the money to help those who are truly homeless as compared to those who are simply taking advantage of the RV dweller issue. And third, I urge the council that they require that the proper city authorities fully and forcefully implement the first phase of the oversized vehicle code on street with bike lanes. Full enforcement is required to have the code succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Chris Hildebrand. I've lived in Mountain View 35 years, and I would recommend you submit the RV ordinance 1519 to the voters in November and let the democracy work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome. Could you speak into the mic, please? There, thank you.
It's okay. I'm immigrant and my family living in the Dale. But unfortunately, I don't like that I see unsafe and dangerous cars. No one should live like a homeless. I'm not limited income, but still pay my rent. You should regulate the RV and parking situation on Dale. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sherry Emling. I've lived in Mountain View for 9 years. I will read this if you don't mind, because I'm going to try to get it done. My concern here is that street dwelling is not an acceptable way to live for anyone. When this first began, there were several alarms going off, but sadly, a couple city council members blocked any true solution. The numbers were small, and our ability to assist these people was workable, if not for a few on the council who inhibited a compassionate and sane resolution. So because of delays and blockages, encouragement by some misdirected people, here we are. The fact is, after years of getting more and more prevalent and troublesome, there's been no complete survey of every RV. We do not know the entire truth. However, we do know this. A large number of our Mountain View, from out of Mountain View should be dealt with by their home city. Many are well-paid Google and LinkedIn engineers who choose not to pay rent or property tax. Google has been approached to take them. They don't want to. Several are even from out of state, which is what we've certainly dealt with. The fact is, this is just getting worse. We need a solution. We need to take the money that we have spent and use it on our people. We cannot take care of the entire peninsula. This is no way for anyone to live. So if someone tells you it's compassionate, it is not. It leads people down a very bad path. We're doing no good for them. Let's take the few we can deal with, spend our money on them, take care of our own people after a strict vetting of it all, because this is no way to live.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Leslie Train, and I've lived in Mountain View since 1975. And I urge the council to submit the ordinance to the voters, April or as soon as possible.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne. I was actually born here in Mountain View. I went to Slater School back when that existed. My parents are teachers in the community, and I've basically seen the town explode over the last 15 years. And now that the pieces are starting to come back together, I'm getting concerned about what kind of a city we're trying to be. I mean, granted, we had one of the biggest engines of technological progress and massive profit fall into our laps, and in the process, we fundamentally have had a shift in the balance of stakeholders and priorities. So we really have to ask, who is Mountain View for? Is it for the trillion-dollar companies with engineers that are revolutionizing, for better or worse, how people connect? Or, I mean, for every one of those jobs, for every engineer, there's a service worker, someone to cook their meals, someone to clean their offices, remodel their buildings, teach their kids. And whether you like it or not, decades of class warfare have depressed wages in all those industries and priced people out of their homes, so that the only options available for most people are to spend hours of their day commuting, where they're polluting and they're away from their families, or to take their chances living in a vehicle in a town so obsessed with its world-class image that it's prepared to kick them out with force. 4 mothers just lost their home in Oakland today as a real estate speculating company refused to sell the house to a community land trust. Deputies with AR-15s dragged these women out into the cold and gave them nowhere else to go, more interested in protecting the profiteering of a financial firm than keeping residents housed. Is this the kind of class warfare you want to see here? Do you want to criminalize poverty? I urge you to strike down this ugly ordinance.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Jackie Cashin, Mountain View Housing Justice Coalition. I had been running through a lot of things to say, but I think at this point I just want to clarify some things that I've heard. First of all, someone seemed to question the number of valid signatures that there were. Fact is, every signature that we gathered was submitted to both the city and the county registrar of voters to match against the registration of voters in the city. Everyone that was certified was a registered voter living at the address that they stated. So those signatures that were considered valid by the county, not by us. The other thing has to do with the implementation of the RV ordinance. That, at this point, because the referendum was successful, that cannot be implemented until it is voted on by the city. The other thing I wanted to say was that I've seen the rough estimates of what a special election is going to cost. And I just find it unconscionable that anyone would consider spending $1.3 to $1.8 million when there's so many other things that that money could be used for. Helping solve the problem of people who are living in RVs would be the first thing that would come to mind, but also addressing the needs of the children who are living in RVs, finding affordable housing, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome.
Connor O'Brien, Mountain View resident. I want to encourage the council to take this opportunity to repeal the ordinance. I think it should be even clearer now than it was in the fall that this ban would displace Mountain View residents and that the council's important efforts to add more safe parking and other solutions would be swamped by the scale of displacement that this would create. In the month after the ordinance passed, I had a chance to have a lot of conversations about it with voters here and got a very clear sense that this is not a measure that the majority of Mountain View residents want. I think that would be borne out if this did have to go to a vote, but it would be better for everyone if it didn't have to come to that, and if RV residents were able to find out here and now that they were able to stay in the city. If you do decide to go forward, I hope you will put it on the November ballot, a separate special election. Spending more than $1 million for this is unnecessary and wasteful, and doing it in November on the general election will give more people a say than on an election with nothing else on the ballot. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name's Ed Sheldon. I'm a resident of Mountain View. I've been here for 20-odd years. And I'd like to reiterate quite a few things that have been said here. A lot of things have been said that I agree with. I'm in favor of the January 14th, 2020 ban on RVs. I think that a place should be made for them, or, you know, and have facilities for them to do whatever they do, you know. And a fee should be charged, I think, for this. I had notes on my computer and it won't open up, so I'm ad-libbing this. But anyway, I agree with a lot of the things that have been said today. I had a gardener working on my house, and I had some tubing in my yard. And he said, "Can I have that tubing?" And I said, "What do you want it for?" And he said, "I live in the van," and not to be like vulgar or whatever, but he said, "I need to put a hole in the side of the van so I can urinate at night." You know, so I think that the sanitary thing is really bad. I took my grandchild to Eagle Park, and he wanted to go to the bathroom. I went into the bathroom, and there was literally feces on the walls, toilet paper all on the floor, and no toilet paper. I went into the women's, and...
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Next speaker, please. Again, please refrain from any emotional outbursts. Welcome.
My name is John Lashley. I'm a Mountain View resident, a proud worker, and a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. We helped collect a large fraction of the signatures that brought us here tonight to force you to take action on this disastrous and stupid measure, this RV ban, which is what it is. You have a few options, but the fact that we so quickly and efficiently gathered more than the required number of signatures speaks to the unpopularity of this measure, which you consider will be reflected in your re-election campaign in November. To the councilors who voted for this disaster, who are up for re-election in November, you will be the face of eviction and you will be defeated. It's very clear. Repeal this measure. Do not waste the $90,000 to put it on the November ballot. Take this year and build your voluntary program to get people to move there, and then revisit this issue in the future. The April ballot is a joke. Of course, you shouldn't spend more than $1 million to do that. So, and you probably don't have the 5 votes anyway, so just repeal it and fix your program and then revisit this next year after the election. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Christine Hatton. I work for ACO Management that owns Greendale Apartments, and the RVs in the area are greatly impacting our residents. we get complaints that they're approached at night to be let into the laundry rooms and the bathrooms and the showers. If they refuse, people are often aggressive and hostile. So the residents are afraid. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a huge increase in crime in the area. And while we understand that crime is not representative of the RV community, it still is something that the residents look to as, you know, this is the cause of my bike being stolen or my apartment being broken into. There's also been instances, many instances, they use our dumpsters, they use our hose bibs, and there aren't a lot of consequences, or police are called, but they don't have the resources to come out. So we would just like to ask that it be put on the ballot. I think repealing it is the polar opposite of a neighborhood watch program. Right now, the residents are, you know, in a situation where they don't know their neighbors. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, fellow community members. My name is Francisco Ochoa. I'm a U.S. veteran of the armed forces. I am a homeowner and I am a business owner in Mountain View. I'm sure we've all heard how we treat our most vulnerable in society is a reflection of the same society. While there's a measure of empathy, just because you own an RV or a tent for that matter, it doesn't mean you can station them wherever you would like. And besides, these vehicles are not meant for permanent habitation. They are recreational vehicles, hence the RV moniker. For these, but mostly for safety reasons, I do agree RVs should not be allowed to stay on streets narrower than 40 feet as stated in legislation. That said, I don't think it would hurt to wait for an election in November. Not only will voter turnout probably be higher, I don't see a point in spending the $1.5 million or whatever close to just to have an election in April. That money would go much better going to other things like maybe helping with the solution to this issue. It would also give the city time to deal with the issues that have come up in the safe parking areas or refer to vehicles which may or may not be properly registered or will not leak oil or other fluids causing problems for the local environment. There have also been issues with insurance for the city at some of these locations, which could be addressed in a manner more conducive to all involved. It would probably be beneficial to have more time to perform more research and compile more data, as the city has already done. I speak with respect to criteria such as how many of the RV dwellers are Mountain View residents that for some reason were displaced, or how many reside. Okay, and then the last thing is, I don't envy you with your decision. If it was an easy problem to solve, you would have solved it by now.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name's Holly Glazebrook, and I'm a Mountain View resident for the last 11 years. I live over by Palo Alto Medical Foundation, and I don't think it's considered a narrow street area, but we have seen an increase, which all of Mountain View has, of these RVs and box trucks actually over by us, parked where we can't even get out of the medical center. They've even set parking parameters which have been ignored by a lot of these RV people. And just recently we had a fifth wheel show up in the red zone, and he extended his pop out into the middle of the street. So now we weren't a narrow street, and now with this pop out we are. Now there's two brand new fifth wheels sitting back there behind the medical center with their extended pop outs, not connected to any kind of tow truck or anything such. And this needs to be addressed. And my request is that it gets put on the ballot in November.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Good evening. My name is Johannes Münzer. I'm a co-chair in the local chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. I'm here because we believe housing is a human right, and we believe that it's wrong to criminalize homelessness, which is what the RV ban is designed to do and would do. Many of our members mobilized as volunteers to get signatures against this ban. As we talked to our neighbors, asking them to sign the petition, we found that they were full of compassion for the people affected. And many of them were facing high rents themselves, asking themselves, would I be next? The fear of displacement is real. It was easy getting those signatures because no one really likes this ban. So council members, please retract this cruel ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Alice Rosenbach, and I am a 16-year resident of Mountain View. I live in the Continental Circle area and also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Repeal this ban. After taking part in the collecting of those 4,939 counted signatures, all within a ridiculously short allocation of time to gather here in Mountain View, I am further convinced that a council that pushes for such an ordinance is not representing me or my RV resident neighbors or the community here in Mountain View. My city council should not be operating on a scapegoat mentality, blaming RV residents for safety when construction trucks and equally other regular cars and other vehicles create the same issue. A successful city council does not stay out of sight, out of mind. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Telling us that you've exhausted all efforts is unacceptable. For a severe, ongoing, increasing housing problem, real choices are disappearing. How does losing your job if you can't stay in the city make sense? Being in an RV for many is a matter of survival, not a choice. The so-called options to go elsewhere are simply not based in reality. We shouldn't further punish people who have become victims of decades of poor housing policies. Telling us that you don't lack compassion for those residents is not only ironic, it's disingenuous, because this ordinance is an action showing that money is more important than people. Repeal this ban.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Derek Liu. I am a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and I would urge Mountain View City Council to repeal this RV ban. I took part in the collection of the signatures for the referendum, and it was clear to me that the number of people who were in favor of repealing the ban vastly outnumbered the number of people who were in favor of the ban. We tabled at multiple places in Mountain View, and this was the case at all of them, including the Caltrain station and multiple shopping centers. We believe that housing is a human right, and considering the lack of affordable housing in the San Francisco Bay Area, I think that attempting to remove people who are trying to find housing near where they live, where their children go to school, is extremely against what a government should do. And I would urge the council to repeal this ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Prodi, and I am a resident of Mountain View. I would like to request the council member to allow RV parking in an area where there is safe, sanitary, and a dignity of life for them. It's not fair to allow them to park anywhere because it does not help the RV guys nor the residents who get impacted. So I would request you to put it on the ballot, let the citizens decide. And as a solution, I would really like that we have zones where people who genuinely need help have the respect of life, and they get the sanitation and all the necessary things so that they can live, and we maintain a good community for the entire city of Mountain View. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
My name is YG, and I'm a Mountain View resident, so I'm here to submit this to the voters. Actually, it's easy to talk about, compassion or everything else if the RV is not parking in front of your house. It's not parking on the street that you're living. It's not. If you are not a Mountain View resident, you probably don't care about what really happens in day-to-day life, and you can talk about a lot of beautiful things. But the reality is, with those oversized vehicle parking on the street, we cannot let the kids biking outside, and we kind of worry about the safety of our kids. And this, I think, is the reason why Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, all the around cities, they actually ban RV. And also, even some people just guided them and asked them to move to Mountain View. Mountain View is a friendly place for them to park for RV vehicles. I think that's kind of like ridiculous for our Mountain View residents. So I kind of urge to submit this to the voter. At least we get the chance to express, the Mountain View residents have the chance to express our opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hey, y'all. We've been hearing a lot of feelings and numbers, and now I'm going to add mine. I've been a resident of Mountain View off and on for the last 8 years. I say off and on because since moving here in 2012, I've been chasing low rents and moved 7 times. 4 of those times was during my first year and a half in the Bay Area. I've lived as far away as Moss Beach and as close as Escuela Avenue. I feel a kinship with the people who live in the RVs, especially after experiencing what happened when my truck broke down. $4,400 later, I was paycheck to paycheck until just last year. One catastrophic event led to beans and rice levels of meals until I very recently was able to have only 1 job instead of the 4 I had to pay not only for my rent, but for my insurance, car upkeep, and food, and, you know, like going to the movies once in a while. The same 1-bedroom apartment I moved into in 2012 for $1,700 a month now goes for $2,800 to $3,900, depending on what the contract you sign. If RVs are outlawed, I'm not sure where members of our community and the service industry will live. People with children are making minimum wage and holding down multiple jobs to provide for themselves and their family. These people are my neighbors. I don't know when they sleep based off of how much they work. I sure didn't enjoy living an hour away from where I work when I lived in Moss Beach. I'm pretty sure if people keep moving to Modesto, Sacramento, and Gilroy, they will take their skills and manpower elsewhere, leaving an empty space in our service industry.
Thank you. Next speaker. Please, welcome up.
Hi, my name's Tim McKenzie. I'm a Mountain View resident. I was here back in October to raise a public safety issue. There was a mirror at the San Antonio Caltrain stop that was missing. 3 months later, it's still missing. I bring that up again to say there's some simple concrete steps you could take to make it easier to live in Mountain View, but it seems like you're focused on making it more difficult to live in Mountain View. I support repealing the RV ban completely. If you must put it on a ballot, then do it in November. The fact that you're considering April at all is it's an absurdity, and it would be a huge waste of money and resources. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Ida Rose Sylvester, Chair of Mountain View's Human Relations Commission. The HRC has formed a unique partnership with a resident group called the Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning. Together, we are co-creating a task force to identify safe parking sites in our city and work with the community to understand the concerns of both the housed residents, businesses, and vehicle dwellers. The HRC has already supported city staff in a number of ways. We've improved public-facing materials related to safe parking, such as permit application and fax. We've talked to area businesses around the VTA lot, gaining a surprising amount of insight, which should help inform the programs going forward. We've begun to talk to potential safe parking lot owners, and we are working on the mechanics of liaisoning with a group in the community. On its own, MVCSP has taken a number of actions as well. They are connecting with members of a wide range of nonprofits to seek guidance and support for safe parking and housing issues. They are working to identify gaps in the messaging and understanding of the public on all sides of the issue. MVCSP is also working with county and state legislative staff to coordinate and share information, and we are beginning to work together on solutions as that group. And we will also be bringing vehicle dweller stories to the forefront. Both groups are working to amplify Mountain View's safe parking program. We need council support in providing a clear safe parking program and hope that you will listen to our feedback from lot owners and vehicle residents alike so we can craft a program that serves everyone. And please note, this groundbreaking work takes time, so please let us have it to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hi, I'm Saba Manwar. I live in downtown Mountain View, off the corner of Shoreline, so I do see these RVs. They're part of my everyday. These are neighbors that I talk to and have had many conversations. I stand before you in hopes to change your mind and to be the voice of residents in this community that are being looked over as a group in this city. In this city, we have residents who live in $1 million homes, tenants that live in apartments, and residents that live in RVs, and those who are homeless. This common thread to all of them is that they're all Mountain View residents, like myself. Without adequate 24-hour safe parking for residents that live in RVs, this ordinance should be repealed. Those safe parking lots have hit a hiccup. The money to put this measure on the ballot could go towards actually creating programs and hiring caseworkers that could help out these residents. The time for concrete solutions was actually yesterday. So let's start now. And this RV ordinance should be not the solution. It turns a blind eye and ignores the help that could be given. I urge you to repeal this ordinance this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Hi, my name is Geraldine Mateo, and I am a resident of Mountain View. I grew up in the city and currently still reside here, so I've seen lots of changes. I want to share an experience that I've had on several occasions. In my neighborhood, we have RVs on many of the blocks surrounding our neighborhood, and one particular street that is a busy street, you can't even get out on that street with almost being hit. They block the cars that are coming down the street, and me personally, I have almost been hit on 2 separate occasions. It's dangerous, something needs to change. The ordinance has been in place for the 72 hours. These RVs are parked there for weeks and months on end. The police are no longer doing anything about it. I think they're tired of the phone calls, and something needs to change. That street that I'm talking about also has a school on it. It's dangerous. We have kids that are walking on that street. So what needs to happen? Something tragic, a really bad accident. So I would just really encourage you to put this on the ballot and let the City of Mountain View voters vote this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Good evening, my name is Serge Bond. I've been a resident of Mountain View for 21 years this month. I wanted to echo many points that were made by the letters you received from the ACLU and the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley, and I wanted to encourage you to repeal that ordinance and instead use your energy and your time to fix the safe parking programs, to build more shelters, and to build more truly affordable housing, which is really the root cause of the issues. Should you decide to take your ordinance and see it in front of the voters, you should definitely do it when there is maximum participation, so that you have a clear message from the voters as to what it is, and it should be in November 2020. Special elections have the effect of depressing participation. So I looked quickly at one of the last local special election. Palo Alto had one in 2016. So in the primary, they had a participant rate of 70%. In the presidential election in November, they had over 80%. For a special election they had in June, the participant rate was right about 40%. So please don't put it in April. That would be a tragic waste of money for the sole purpose of depressing voters.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hi, Ken Alwing, Mountain View residence, 12 years, near Pamph. Recommend please submit the RV ordinance to voters in November. Seems like council has done a good job thinking through the safe parking program and RV management and regulation. Again, just please submit to voters in November. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hi, Jeremy Dittmer, lived in Mountain View for 7 years. I would encourage you to please ask the voters what they think about this situation. My experience has been that RVs create dangerous traffic situations. I was almost in an accident yesterday on my way home from work because RVs were blocking sight lines. RVs have changed the nature of neighborhoods. People move in, we don't know who the neighbors are. They could be people from other surrounding areas that have banned RVs, or opportunistic people who do not want to pay rent. I've known 3 individuals personally in this situation, coworkers, etc. They could be sex offenders who don't have to register as quickly. We don't know anything about these people. This is an issue that affects residents of Mountain View non-uniformly. The RVs are clustered in certain areas. It might be easy to get signatures in areas that are less affected than others. And I think repealing the issue does not represent the will of the people. How can 10% of voters decide for the entire community? It's easy to appeal to people's compassion. People are good people by nature and want to be compassionate. We don't know what was told to people when they signed this petition. If it was framed as, please be a nice person and stop the ban, then of course people will be willing to sign that. I don't think that represents the will of the people. I'm supportive of providing assistance where needed, but we don't know who these people are or if they're actually in need or taking advantage of the free housing our community is supplying. Allowing RVs to park wherever they please is not a solution. Let's find other ways to help.
Thank you. Thank you for your next speaker. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Barbara Goodwin, Mountain View resident for many years. I urge the council to do this. Repeal the ordinance, or if you must, submit it to the voters in November. Don't spend the big bucks on the April election. But the big issue is homeless people need to be dealt with, and they need housing. And some of these sleep on the lot all night in your car, that doesn't cut it. You gotta go more, you gotta do more than that. Big words, nice promises don't go very far. They need housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up. Tight here.
Good evening. My name is David Pickard, been a resident of Mountain View for a number of years. I am in favor of the ordinance. Feel that the RVs represent a safety issue that needs to be dealt with, and would encourage you to submit this to the voters.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Hi, Steve Abura, been a Mountain View resident for about 10 years. I just wanted to put in my opinion on the ban that is in place and with the votes that were cast, or the signatures that were cast to repeal it. Basically, I was presented with the same signature option when I went to the store when they came to my house. And I guess I felt like it was never portrayed properly because they just kept saying a ban, and I guess I didn't read into it. Not saying I signed or didn't, but with that said, I think it would just be best to put it on the ballot for November. Maybe not spend the money for the emergency April ballot, but give people a chance to research this a little bit more instead of just kind of opting for a quick signature while folks are on their way to get Starbucks or milk at the store. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Doug Howland. I've been living in Mountain View for 7 years. My kids have gone to the schools, and we love Mountain View. On October 27, 2019, a nighttime fire in a motorhome in St. Paul, Minneapolis, resulted in 1 death. And there was a second person that was burned severely, and this was like the motorhomes that we have parked in Mountain View. We do not want a tragedy here in Mountain View like they've had in Minneapolis. Motorhomes, RVs, modified campers parked on city streets with people living in them are not a short or long-term solution to a very expensive housing market here in Silicon Valley. You've worked hard, you've got a lot of options, continue pursuing them, but this is, RVs are not that long-term solution. It is unsafe, it is unhealthy for individuals and families to live in RVs on city streets without proper hookups or support. We need RV parking controls. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
So there was a time when I wanted to be a lawyer, but the state wouldn't fund me. So now the best I can do is actually just talk to lawyers and ask them if my understanding of the law is kind of on point. I'm sure you guys have heard about Martin versus Boise, that Ninth Circuit decision that the Supreme Court didn't even take up, for the appeal. As you guys know, it says that you essentially can't kick people out of anywhere if they're sleeping on the public right-of-way, streets, sidewalks, parks, things like that. And they have a legally protected right to be there. Right now, the alternative that they're choosing is to live in RVs. And so I think that there's a be careful what you wish for scenario going on right now, because you can definitely enforce a parking ban till the cows come home. That law doesn't do anything for parking regulations, but you'll have a much harder time enforcing kicking people off of the street when invariably, for whatever reason that those of us without housing choose to end up on the street, and what city they choose to live in as a homeless person, some of them will pick Mountain View. And as the housing crisis keeps getting worse, more people will end up on the street, more people will be suffering in plain view on the sidewalks, and you'll have limited options for responding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Hi, my name is Vince Urdi. I'm a resident for about 7 years now. I like Mountain View. So earlier in the presentation you guys had for that new development, in the presentation earlier, there was no room for parking. There was no RVs in that presentation. And I was wondering why that hasn't taken into account the parking situation with that. There was no parking for extra vehicles in the vicinity. So I was wondering if that was taken into account at all. Another thing is my perspective, I'm a utility worker for a water company. I have to work amongst folks that are displaced out of a home, and I can tell you it is sometimes a ghastly job for me. I have to deal with excrement from human beings. I have to deal with drugs that have been displaced inside meter boxes. It's something you guys need to take into account. People, your utility workers in this area, are you keeping them safe with this RV thing? I am against this. You shouldn't be spending the $1 million for whatever to have the special vote. Take that money, set it aside for more research, because obviously it needs to be done. But again, my perspective is, are you taking into account the people who have to work on the streets in the areas in this problem? If there's a main leak, if there's a fire, if someone's getting pulled over, any number of things, those are not being taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hi, my name is Janet Stevens. I was born in Mountain View. I've lived here my entire life. I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to read this. I want to, number one, thank all the community that are here on both sides of the issue, the employees and the people in the back that you probably don't ever see that never get enough recognition. Hopefully we all came here to get a solution that stopped criminalizing Mountain View residents that were forced to be homeless due to ever increasing rents. This is an important regional issue that we all know about, but never more important than the Silicon Valley and Mountain View because of us being home to Google. Most of the people that are currently living in Mountain View vehicles used to rent here. They were contributing to property taxes, and until they were pushed out of their homes, they weren't able to do that anymore, but most of them are stuck here because they have jobs, they have children that go to school, they go to church here, their foundations are here, they still shop here, they pay sales tax here and contribute to the community in many, many ways that I think is not considered here. I wonder who's going to be serving ice cream and things like that should all the people not be able to live here that are living in RVs because they can't afford the rents. In my opinion, having an election in July, as everybody has agreed, I think would be fiscally extremely irresponsible for the city of Mountain View to do. I'm trying to do this fast. It would also be noted that since the referendum had passed, there's been increasingly a tremendous amount of law enforcement on the RVs. One RV person who'd been hospitalized and everyone knew that he was, his RV was towed anyway. This is detrimental to the gentleman. Safe parking sounds like a good idea. Oops, I'm in trouble, but it's not for many reasons.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Dan. I'm a homeowner in Mountain View for more than 10 years. I support banning RV on streets because it introduces traffic issues and causes unnecessary spend of city resources such as police, park, and extra. So as a community, I believe we should seek other ways to solve the root cause, which is the housing and the high living cost issue. But allowing RV on street is definitely not the long-term solution for that. So that said, I support the audience, and if we have to, we need to submit this to voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, welcome up.
Hi, Megan Fraley. Thank you, Council. I personally hate seeing the RVs on the street. And part of that to me is it represents the massive inequality that we're facing in Silicon Valley and the housing crisis. I know we're all concerned with crime, with people getting hurt, and the RVs are a symptom of a bigger problem. If we have the, I won't call it RV ban, but whatever the ordinance is called, if we pass that, it's not going to lead to less crime and less safety. As a woman, if I was to lose my apartment and have to find somewhere to sleep, I would rather sleep in an RV than a car because I would feel I'd feel in a lot of danger. So in terms of danger going away or crime going away, I think we'll see it increase if we're to have people move from the RVs onto the street, which is likely where some of them will end up going. So thank you for considering, I'm feeling a lot right now, this is hard. Yeah, but I did want to say one more thing, and I have 23 seconds for everyone to stare at me in silence. Oh, the business tax. Inequality is a big problem. I think we should pass a gross receipts tax and have about $60 million a year in taxes from the wealthy corporations that we have here so that we can actually address the root of the problem, which is inequality and jobs, housing, and balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Lenny Siegel, resident of Mountain View since 1972. I personally collected 342 signatures knocking on doors, standing outside markets. I found that 75% or more of the people who are registered voters in Mountain View that I approached signed the petition. They signed it knowing what it was about. But even the people who didn't want to sign the petition agreed with the petitioners that we need solutions. So rather than throw people out who are living on Crisanto and Continental Circle, we need something to address the problem. Yet the ordinance itself says that the narrow streets typically have more curb cuts, driveways, than other streets. Well, the fact is that Crisanto doesn't have curb cuts along the tracks, yet Old Middlefield, which is one of the few streets left in Mountain View, where my office is, that you might, if people find spaces, might be able to park a motorhome that has lots of curb cuts. So moving people from Crisanto to Old Middlefield will increase the traffic problems. Also, on the issue of safe parking, City Attorney's Office has said safe parking 24 hours a day would turn them into mobile home parks or RV parks. That's not what the law says. I'd like to see some documentation about why we can't go to 24/7 parking, because you need to pay rent to make something a mobile home park. So I support putting this on the ballot, because I told people I was collecting signatures to put it on the ballot. I'd like to see it on the ballot in November, because I think the strong majority of Mountain View voters will defeat the ban.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Joan McDonald again, a resident of Mountain View since 1960, long before all of you on the dais were born. My concern about this ordinance is that it really doesn't solve any problems at all. It just makes things harder for the people who are in RVs, and it effectively would push all of those people out of Mountain View. We need an inclusive community, and that means we need some real solutions, not a push out, not a ban. What we've been hearing is all of the work that has gone into trying to find safe parking, but the safe parking was only from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. And if this went into effect, that means that whatever the safe parking came to be, the people would have to be out at 9 a.m. and there would be no place for them to park in Mountain View, in spite of the fact that many work in Mountain View. They wouldn't be able to park in Mountain View during their work. This makes no sense at all.
Thank you. And is this our final speaker? Anyone else wishing
Hope
to
so.
speak?
I want to be last. Hey, Alex Brown, Mountain View. Two things. One, I bike and walk to work, and oversized vehicles are not the ones that get in the way. It's usually construction and particularly the signs they put in the bike lanes, which are really frustrating, or the people who put a bunch of like leaves and cuttings from trees and things. That's frustrating. I've never had any safety issues caused by RVs or oversized vehicles around me. But two, who are we to tell people how to live their lives? Why should we dictate who does what and when and why? It's a libertarian's perspective. Come on. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Please come up. And if there are others, if you could come up and line up to speed it up, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, John Carpenter, resident of Mountain View for 52 years. Now, let me tell you what's changed in all of that time. Homeless people living on the street, or people living in RVs on the street, that's number one, caused by only one variable. Only one thing happened that caused that to happen, and that's the rent. And why do people want to charge rent? Well, we got a different kind of landlord since I first arrived. We used to have carrying landlords. Now we have speculator landlords that will drive the rent up as far as they can get away with. So there it is. The thing that has happened in 52 years, and why, and do something about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Final call. All right, if not, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council. I have Councilmember McAllister in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be making a motion, but I want to make a few comments beforehand. To Joan, I've been here longer than you've been here, so just to let you know. But tonight, I've heard a lot of concerns, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of compelling reasons on both sides of the ballot on the issue. We've been working on this since 2015, for people to just give you a little context of what's been going on, and to try to get the safe parking. The city has spent over $2 million on this particular issue, and we're spending more. We're working with CSA. So the city is trying to find solutions, and it's really hard because it is a broad problem and it affects many people in many areas. So when I hear people talking about the city's not compassionate, I say they don't fully understand what we're trying to do. We're up here on this committee, and I want to give credit to the advocates for getting the ballot measure or put the repeal out there. You know, that's very commendable that you came out and you worked that hard, and you brought that attention to the full city now. And that's why I feel it's the full city's responsibility to vote on it. We represent not 4,000 people, not 5,000 people, we represent 80,000 people. And so when I sit up here and I see this, I go, yes, it's great. Now let the residents discuss it and vote on it. They're the ones that are going to have to live with it. They're the ones that got to fund it. So the motion I'm going to make, and I'll read shortly, is we've discussed it, time to get a solution one way or the other and move on. And in the meantime, I encourage those individuals and those groups to continue to work to find solutions for this particular problem. Yes, I need these there are workers that I hire. There's workers for everybody in this area. But I think the time has come to move on as a city, but to continue to find solutions. So I will make the motion that, 1, adopt a resolution accepting certification of the sufficiency of signatures on the referendum petition. Ordinance against Ordinance 15.9, an ordinance amending Article 1 and Article 8 of Chapter 19 of the Mountain View City Code related to oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets, to be read in title only. Further reading waive, attachment 1 to the council report. 2, adopt a resolution calling for the holding of a general municipal election on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, and requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Clara to consolidate the municipal election with the presidential general election to be held on that date pursuant to Section 10403 of the Election Code for the purpose of submitting to the voters an ordinance amending Article 1 and 8 of Chapter 19 of the Mountain View City Code related to the oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets and related actions to be read in title only. Further reading waive, attachment 3 to the council report. Direct the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of the ballot measure. 2, to determine whether the council will submit an argument related to the ballot measure and to designate the mayor and or council members to write and sign in the agreement. 3, direct the city clerk and the city attorney to take all necessary related actions for submitting the measure to the voters on November 3rd, 2020. Direct staff to include funding of $90,000 in the proposed fiscal year 2021 city clerk's office budget for the County of Santa Clara services and legal advertising in connection with the general municipal election. And also, I forgot to make the comment that I agree with everybody, I think everybody does, to spend $1.8 million on election is not fiduciary responsibility, and that's why I was going for the November 2nd. So I asked all of my council members to, if there's discussion, but to come out and support this 100% to allow the voters of Mountain View to finally decide their direction they want to see. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a second by Councilmember Matichak, who's also in queue next.
Thank you. So I appreciate you making your comments, Councilmember McAllister. I agree with what you said. I just want to add that we have been talking about this public health and safety issue of oversized vehicles as long as I've been on council and even before. And we have done a great deal of work to try to address this issue. I wish the safe parking program didn't have the glitch it had, and I'm still hopeful that those parking lots will be open soon. And I think what some folks are missing is one of the benefits of the safe parking program is the folks who will be parking there will work with caseworkers. And we've had great success when folks work with caseworkers to get them into more stable housing. And that's the ultimate goal. Councilmember McAllister before has said, you know, it's sometimes you need tough love. But really, you know, this living in a vehicle should not be a long-term solution. And so to work with the caseworkers to get folks into stable housing is really the goal here. I want to talk about the motion because I'm not sure if that included the ballot statement or the ballot question. It doesn't specifically call that out, but is that part of the motion that was made?
I believe it's part of the resolution. It has the language the clerk read earlier.
So I had a proposed change to the ballot question that I sent to the city attorney earlier today because there are lots of rules that surround that. And I know he's had an opportunity to look at it. And I was wondering if Councilmember McAllister would entertain a change to the question.
Could we hear it, please?
Yeah.
I can read it, and also I can maybe work with the clerk to put it up on the screen. The revised, first I should just recap for everybody. The election code allows for some flexibility in the ballot question as long as it states the general nature of the ordinance and is not misleading or argumentative. It's permissible. So I'll read it and then I can work with Lisa to get it up on the screen. Shall the City of Mountain View ordinance 15.19, which prohibits parking of oversized vehicles such as recreational vehicles, boats, and construction trucks without valid permits, except certain vehicles with a valid disabled placard and those exempted for short duration activities such as loading and unloading, and emergency vehicles on narrow streets 40 feet or less in width be adopted. So we'll get that up on the screen for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see that too, because that was definitely revised since what we talked about to conform with the election code.
I'm going to jump in. Is there a way we can actually then bifurcate this motion and take the motion of the certification and the placement of the ballot first, and then come back with the second motion for the language of the ballot statement? Can we do that?
Yes, the resolution contains the ballot language, so you could do the certification, but probably for the resolution, placing it on the ballot, since that contains the ballot question, we should probably include that in that motion.
Okay. All right, then we'll keep it together. Do you have anything else, Councilmember?
Well, so I was asking Councilmember McAllister if he would be open to revised wording for the ballot question. Oh.
Could you, I'd be up to it.
Is it?
But what is different? That's my question to you.
Have you stated your?
So if you look in the staff report on page 6, you'll see the original one, and what's different is this one gives examples of what are oversized vehicles. It also talks about the exemptions for specific types of vehicles or what they're doing. And also, I felt like it was a little bit more clear in terms of what we are asking voters. So ordinance 1519 prohibits parking of oversized vehicles. And
I'm on page 6 now, and
we're asking, should our ordinance be adopted?
I'm on page 6 and I don't see it.
So
Page 6 of the staff report, so it's right in the middle of the page.
I believe it's also in the resolution, in attachment 3, page 2. I'll read it. It says, shall ordinance number 15.19, amending Articles 1 and 8 of Chapter 19 of the Mountain View City Code related to oversized vehicle parking on narrow streets be adopted. So that's what's being that's what's in the resolution now. And then Councilmember Matichak, your version is the one now on the
one on the screen, right?
Great.
I'll accept.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll move on, and we have some discussion. So we'll go to Vice Mayor.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to thank the public, both those who spoke to us here and those who emailed and reached out to us. It's always so important to hear directly from you. I'd also like to thank staff for the presentation and all the work that went into tonight. So before we take the vote, which it sounds like will be all-encompassing and together, I just wanted to state that I will be supporting putting this on the ballot in November. And I just wanted to clarify why. I do believe that this is the most challenging public policy issue that our city is facing, as well as our state, our country. And I really wanted to touch upon the public comment related to humanity. When I knocked on doors in 2018, this issue was the number one issue that came up on every single door I knocked on. And I was asked, can you do something? So when I am asked, can I do something, I feel like it is incumbent upon myself to listen to the residents to do that. So what have we done? We have approved housing at all income levels for those with disabilities. We have looked into safe parking programs, increased those lots. I leaned forward last year and asked for including parking at Shoreline. We are also working with the county to look into the ability to have 24/7 lots. So that has been an area of frustration for both the council and the public, and we've been working on that. We've also increased funding for case management and worked directly with the Community Services Agency on that funding. We've talked to our private sector community and asked for increased funding. Last year, Google stepped forward with $100,000. And yesterday, when I met with them, I asked them if they would be willing to commit more to case management. We are doing multi-prong, multi-avenue in terms of being able to help those in need. And I feel like at this point, after over half a dozen council meetings last year, after the conversations I had at the door, that it truly is up to the voters to decide. And that's why I'll be supporting this on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hicks.
I agree with, it seems, everyone in this room that we need better solutions than just reconfiguration of oversized vehicle parking. And at the same time, I will, if I'm able to locate the original and the changed wording, I will be supporting putting this on the November ballot. The reason is that I have heard so much from people on both sides of this issue that I think it's something that the people of Mountain View have to discuss. I agree with several members of the public who said that the reason for the growth of this problem is the huge number of low-income jobs that are being created along with high-income jobs in this community. And I believe that that this problem will continue to grow, and that we actually need to work on, as I think everybody here and everybody I've spoken to actually on both sides of the issue, and many of you who are sitting in the public tonight, that we really need to work on more than just reconfiguration of parking. That is not going to solve this problem. That said, I do think that the people of Mountain View have to decide, and I will be looking for the two different wordings so I know what I vote for. I know.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Just to echo my colleagues, thank you to everyone who spoke tonight on both sides and for the civil discourse. As more than one person pointed out, if this were a simple thing, we would have fixed this back in 2013, 2014 when we first started talking about this issue. And it's been difficult. So I personally, I don't like any of the options in front of us. I ruled out April. That's just obscenely expensive, and that money can be used, as many have pointed out, in much better ways. I don't think that completely repealing this and doing nothing in addition is the right course either. My personal preference would have been, I think the reason that this is before us is tonight, frankly, is that we sometimes we don't always make the right decision the first time, and we overcorrect in one way or another. And I just think that the ordinance as crafted is too broad, and I think that's really what caused folks on sort of the so RV residents and those who are advocating for them to come out so forcefully against this and gather the signatures that they gathered. And not to beat a dead horse, but I think if we'd crafted, an ordinance that was dealt with, a lot of the safety and other issues that wasn't quite as broad as what we ended up with, we may not have had to go to this referendum process, and we could have some solutions that I think everyone in the room would have been at least somewhat happy with in a much sooner time frame instead of having to wait until 10 days after the certification of election, which would be December, almost a year from now, if the voters allow this ordinance to go into effect. So, having said that, I think at this point, given the difficulty of the issue and the time that we spent and all the programs that we put in place, safe parking and other things, I think it actually does make sense to present to the voters this piece of the puzzle and ask if they're willing to go that far. And it doesn't make sense to do it in April, and I think the only time that it really makes sense to do it, unfortunately, is I would prefer to do it sooner, but November is the next most viable option. And so I will reluctantly support putting this on the ballot, and hopefully the voters can help us come to conclusion on this sort of piece of the puzzle. This is by no means a solution, but it is one of the pieces. The enforcement piece is something that we've struggled with for a number of years. So.
Thank you. Councilmember McAllister.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one other comment. That on January the 8th, The Voice put an editorial or story on there, and they used the word RV ban. And I think that was misleading and not appropriate of their use of the public opportunity display. You know, some people might say it's an RV ban, some others, but technically it isn't. So in the future, I would expect that the media would portray what we're doing in the true light that it is, and go back to their editorials and department and make sure that they tell the truth, because a lot of people look at the Voice and they expect to see truth coming out of it and a straight story. And so I'm asking the Voice or any other media to make sure that they do not use the word RV ban, and because that's not the truth.
Thank you. Councilmember Ramirez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll be supporting the motion, but I would like to ask the maker of the motion if they would be willing to make a clarifying modification. So I'm comfortable with this language, but I don't want to mislead voters into thinking that vehicles with a disabled placard are all exempt from its provisions. I think reading the ordinance, it looks like it's fairly narrowly scoped to wheelchair accessible vans. Unless I'm misunderstanding, but
that is correct. We were also mindful of the word limit for the measure, but that is correct. We can, and I also have some further clarifications after.
Okay. Well, if the maker of the motion is comfortable with that modification, just to make clear, so this is the exemption here, number 6, and it would be just to clarify that would be the vehicle type. Well, so this is included in the ordinance. It would just be to make the language in the ballot question consistent with the provision, with the exemption as written in the ordinance.
Except certain vehicles with valid disabled cars.
And so I believe what Councilmember Ramirez is proposing is instead of certain vehicles, it would be except wheelchair accessible vans with a valid disabled placard to track the ordinance. And we had thought about putting that in, but we chose a more of a summary motion language, but we can certainly do that. And there was, were you finished with your clarification?
Yes, thank you.
There was two other things that we caught. We put this together late this afternoon. In the first line, second line, oversized should read oversized with a D. And also in looking at the phrase construction trucks without valid permits, the ordinance exempts construction trucks with valid permits, but perhaps to make that more clear, we could delete construction and without valid permits and just put large trucks if the maker of the motion and the council is happy with that. But that would be more really encompassing but still accurate, and it would eliminate the potential ambiguity of the without valid permits, which our assistant city manager pointed out correctly could create confusion regarding other types of vehicles. So I think this is probably a clearer way to say it if the council is okay with that.
So my question is, how do you define a large truck? Is it a big Dodge Ram, a large truck?
Well, the ordinance already has dimensions specified, and we could have put that in, but we might have gone over the word limit. And I would also just respectfully ask the Madam Clerk if we could do a word count just to make sure we're under 75. I think we are.
And if I could just get clarification on the additional, the first change you noted, city attorney, so that I can have that in here as well. I just want to make sure.
In the word "except" in that line that you're in right there, except, and you would delete certain vehicles and replace and insert the text wheelchair - accessible vans. And that will track the ordinance language.
So the maker of the motion, do you accept the changes?
Well, let's see how many words we have.
Okay, well, while we're waiting then, I'm going to have my word. So I do want to thank the public for coming out and for the many emails we've also received over the last few days. I do appreciate everyone being very respectful of each other. This is a difficult issue. We've been dealing with it for many years. Frankly, I felt like we inherited it from the council before us. And there could have been a time when it wasn't as large an issue as it has become. But we have worked diligently over the last couple of years, I would say, especially last year, in coming up with some solutions. I think the safe parking program, it's just getting off the ground, and there's still more work to do on that. I do believe, though, that as we learned from other cities like Santa Barbara that have this similar program, there is it goes hand in hand with some kind of restrictions. I do want to clarify, as Councilmember McAllister mentioned, we talk about oversized vehicles, so this is not just about RVs. And what's been interesting is since the new year, the emails that we've received have been more about the large construction trucks and so forth parked in the neighborhoods as well. So, I mean, there is, to me, I believe there is a safety issue. My daughter, who bikes to school, and her friends have mentioned, and they've actually said it's just hard to bike to school and back when there's just parking throughout the, street. And my frustrations with some of our parking spillage in downtown, but I think that, so I just want to clarify that we are trying to cover not just RVs, but all oversized vehicles with this. But at this point in time, as mentioned, I think it is time for the voters to vote. I don't expect us to suspend our work with trying to find solutions. As the Vice Mayor mentioned, we are working on quite an aggressive program on finding housing opportunities, affordable housing opportunities, anti-displacement, and we have a huge list of items to cover this year on our work plan that deals with housing affordability, and we will continue to do so. In terms of safe parking, I was pleased to actually had a chance to meet with our county supervisor, Joe Simidian, over the weekend, and as we all received information, he has, he's stepped up and is taking this issue very seriously as well. He is proposing funding from the Board of Supervisors to pay for some of the safe parking program costs, dealing with the insurance issue there. And also, he's going to be, he said he's going to be engaging in a campaign, actively trying to find more safe parking lots, not just in Mountain View, though, but throughout his district in the county. And I very much appreciate and welcome that. I told him that I personally am happy to help in any way I can. I'm sure my colleagues would be the same. So we are continuing to work on this. This is, but I do think that, personally, I think that it goes hand in hand. But at this point in time, in light of the discussion and the interest that has happened on this issue, it is time for the voters to vote, and I will be supporting the motion and putting it on the ballot in November. So with that, do we have a count on the ballot statement?
Yeah, I conservatively counted 56, but it's likely 55 words.
Great.
And that's under our 75-word limit.
Correct.
Okay. And we don't want to add anything else or modify it or city attorney, council members? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you will accept the
I will
modification?
accept the amendment.
Great.
Changes, yes.
Seconder with you as well? All right, great. Any other discussion on this item?
Could I just, excuse me,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, could I just
Yes.
ask for clarification on the portion of the motion regarding determining whether the council will submit an argument related to the ballot measure and designating any council members to write and sign the argument? I just want to confirm that.
Do we have to determine that now? It was in, I did make it, but do we have to make that determination now?
I guess if you're determining that the council will, go ahead.
Yeah, we can bring that back and discuss that at a later time.
I think it's already, set up to allow the council to do that. So I think we likely wouldn't need anything to bring back.
Okay.
Do we need to designate the members at this time, or can we bring that back, or how would we appoint those members?
I'm trying to recall how we recently did it for SFRA, if that was done on the same night. Okay.
Yes,
Maybe it would be a good idea
typically.
to take that further action tonight then. And it would be designate the mayor and/or council members to write and sign the argument.
But that's what we already said. So what are
We have to designate
Actually designate the
which members, which council members should be signers. Is that right?
Yes.
So, Councilmember McAllister, as the motion maker, do you have a recommendation?
Anybody that wants to do it. I have no, there is no, I defer to the mayor. I don't appoint, the mayor does.
Would anyone be willing to be a signer? Councilmember Magic? Is it 3 or? It can't be more than 3, okay. And there's also the rebuttal, so I guess I guess I'm not, certain we really need to decide on all of that this evening. We didn't do that for the other measure.
We didn't, okay. I think you could just have the mayor's authority to designate that and coordinate with the city clerk, the designated council members. I think that would be sufficient.
Okay, so.
Yeah, is that what you were asking to do it later?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I think that is
Could
possible.
we take volunteers if they want to submit to the city clerk, and then I can
Yeah, 'cause I don't
determine,
think
or we can determine later?
Yes, that's what I was
I don't
suggesting.
recall us
yeah.
doing it that night. Chris, you could chime in on this, but that we did all the designation on that night, though.
I think we actually did, but I think we sort of prepared for it. I just want to state for the record, I would actually be uncomfortable with the council taking a position one way or the other on it. I would be willing to join a committee that sort of wrote a fact base, here's what you're voting for sort of thing, but I would be uncomfortable advocating. I mean, my whole impetus behind putting this to the voters is like, we've done everything we can on this, weigh in. I would be uncomfortable, and I wouldn't want to be part of a committee that would draft an argument for or against. Just so I state, I'm not going to vote against this whole thing because of that, obviously, but I just want to state that for the record, that I may be in the minority, but I don't think the council should take a position one way or the other. I think we should just present the facts to the voters, explain, it's not a ban, but it does do these things. And if you're comfortable with that, support it. If you're not comfortable with that, vote against it. But we don't have to decide that tonight. If you want to just give the mayor the authority to appoint 3 people, we can do that at a later date and decide. But I think at some point the council should decide, should the argument be one way or the other, or should it be sort of a neutral fact-based argument?
What does the current motion state?
It's fairly general, and it says designate the mayor and/or council members to write and sign the argument.
For the measure?
Yes.
Measure.
It also states to determine whether the council. So, again, I don't recall us having to decide that. This gives us the authority to do it. I didn't say it had to do it tonight, so.
And you can designate the mayor to appoint 3 council members to do that in the future.
And then would we bring back the item of whether it is a valid argument for or simply stating the points back to us, to council for a vote?
No, I think the designation to the mayor would be sufficient to identify the 3 council members, and they can develop the write and sign the argument. If you wanted to discuss parameters of that argument, such as Councilmember Clark's suggestion, if it's a fact-based argument, you could make that determination tonight, if that's your preference.
Councilmember Hicks?
Yes, so I would prefer a fact-based argument.
I feel that we've already given us the direction, we've given us the permission, we've already designated the mayor. I think this is an important issue. I don't want to be put on the spot that we got to say boom, boom, boom. Let's sit down and deliberate this with full knowledge and the staff and so forth. So I think the motion includes everything, and that I would like to bring it back to the council after the mayor has designated the individuals or those who stepped up.
And then the ad hoc committee can work on the language, and that would come back
Yes.
to council for approval.
Yes,
Correct.
that's.
Okay, great. Is everyone clear on the motion? Yes? And looks like we are ready to vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We are moving on. All right. We move on to item 8, council, staff, and committee reports. Are there any council reports? Yes, Councilmember Hicks.
So this is kind of a save the date report. I'd like to report that on March 12th at the new community center in Rengstorff Park, and with the assistance of our wonderful Public Works Department, the city will host a symposium entitled Green Streets for Sustainable Communities.
I'm sorry. Could the audience please quietly exit the chambers? We're still conducting our meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like me to do it
Just start
again?
over.
Sure. I'd like to report that on March 12th at the new community center at Rengstorff Park, and with the assistance of our wonderful Public Works Department, the city will host a symposium entitled Green Streets for Sustainable Communities. And the symposium will take a deep dive into some inspiring changes in the field of public works and streetscaping, changes that will integrate our streets. I don't mean just Mountain View streets, but streets all over, hopefully, the country or the world, into a no net impact system with the larger natural environment, changes that are particularly important to addressing climate change, and changes that hopefully will also make our streets and cities more pleasant places for the people who live on them. Not live on the streets, live here. Exciting keynote speakers will include John Bela of Gale Studio, who we just hired to do some consulting on the first block of our downtown, and Zabe Bent, Director of Design for the National Association of Transportation Officials. And I'll present more information in the future and give everybody, an information, a fact sheet and so forth, but I just wanted to make a save the date announcement, and I'm very excited about the symposium.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I'm still getting used to the title. Last Saturday, I attended the CHOC board retreat, and looking forward to a lot of more partnership with the city and CHOC in the future.
Great, thank you. Councilmember McAllister.
Looking for something right now. Could skip me
Sure.
and come back.
Does anyone else want to share? Well, yes.
So I attended, on behalf of the mayor and vice mayor who were otherwise engaged, the Cities Association board meeting. And at that board meeting, the group voted to endorse a resolution regarding principles around basically having better transportation and a specific proposal. And that will come to the council for consideration if the city of Mountain View also wants to endorse that. And then I also attended the Cities Association Selection Committee, and we're looking for folks to who might be interested in the Emergency Operations Council. It meets during the day, which is a challenge for me this year. So there's an opening, and it's for North County cities.
Councilmember McAllister, are you still looking?
No, I got
it. Okay.
I got it. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Yes.
I was looking over. So on Thursday, I'm the board rep for the VTA, and we had a meeting, and the highlights are, it was pretty quiet, okay, because we came back from it. Let's see, how does it pertain to, that's why I was looking for something. One of the, I guess the biggest things that came up was people came up to ask about, to declare a climate crisis. And the board was trying to understand exactly what they were looking for compared to what we were doing. And it was just a referral, it was an informational item. And so the discussion was, well, what are we doing that we can do, or what can we do if we look through a different lens? And it will be coming back to the board. But we were trying to let these individuals know that the VTA has a very limited budget, and if we change something one way from another, it affects everything. But we are considering what they were requesting about a climate change, declaring a climate change emergency, and what actually does that entail. So that was our big discussion, but we did not go there. So we are going to look further into it.
All right. Thank you. And I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board meeting on Wednesday. I ended my term as chair. Our new chair is Howard Miller from Saratoga. And it was, we had actually a very interesting presentation by a high school student who is engaged in a youth action program, and really quite impressive young man who's developed a program to engage young people in advocacy and education on sustainability measures. And so it was very, very, really impressive, this young high school student. So we definitely wanted to make sure he reaches out to the schools in our city. And then I did also attend the Legislative Action Committee of the Cities Association, where we talked briefly about transportation, although we were more focused on housing. As many folks probably know, SB 50 has returned in somewhat of a different form. So that was a topic of discussion, and we expect other pieces of housing legislation to move forward And so we will continue to monitor the state legislation around housing and then now transportation. So any other committee reports by staff?
I just had a quick question. Are we going to, we're going to get a report on the SB 330, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're working in conjunction with the Community Development Department to try to put together a high-level informational memo for council, and we're actually meeting later this week to further develop that. So I think that could be brought to you later this month. And
So when you say high level, what does that mean?
oh, I just didn't, when I say that, I'm referring to not bogging the council down with lots of statutes and fine interpretations, but big impacts of the legislation. That's what I'm referring to.
Specifically, like the one where if you tear down something, you got to replace it?
Yes, more concepts of the litigation, and don't want to get lost in the
Okay.
fine points. That's what I was referring to.
Thank you.
Great. Is there a closed session report?
There is no
to the
closed session
attorney?
report tonight.
Great, thank you. So we will adjourn our regular meeting to the next council meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 28th, 2020 at 5 p.m. in the Plaza Conference Room. But we actually need, now we'll be returning and reconvening our earlier study session on Environmental Planning Commissioner appointments. I'd like to take, let's say, a 10-minute break and reconvene in the Plaza Conference Room at, well, a little under 10 minutes, 9:15. So thank you and good night.